Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. We're here this week to return to the Disney afternoon because we've got one more show to discuss, and in many ways, it is a show that is potentially one of the most beloved and cult classic of all the Disney afternoon shows. Personally, I would put it like number 2 or 3, but that's my personal preference. Still, it is a high-ranking and wonderful Disney afternoon show. We're talking about Goof Troop. Goof Troop tells the story of Goofy, now a single father, raising his son Max. And in the first episode, Goofy decides to move him and Max to Goofy's old hometown, where he quickly reunites with his childhood friend Pete, the antagonistic, greedy kind of bloke who has his own family that lives next door to Goofy. Max, however, immediately befriends Pete's oldest child, PJ, and you have all the mixings for a classic TV sitcom, which is ultimately what Goof Troop was, Disney Afternoon's purest answer to the primetime sitcoms that had been popular since the dawn of television. But what was the inspiration? Hey, it's actually a little simpler than you think. See, the inspiration harkens back to the earliest era of Goofy as a character, before he was often portrayed more as a best buddy to Mickey and one who tends to drag Mickey into some trouble so Mickey can save Goofy from himself and be the cool guy he is. Because, A-listers got to A-list. Goofy often had a series of his own cartoons in which he simply goofed his way through life. A handful of them featured a son and heard but rarely seen wife. The son was usually just referred to as Goofy Jr. However, that whole concept was now given a modern coat of paint, and he had a name in his own right as Max. Goof Troop ran from 1992 to 1993, racking up 65 episodes in first-run syndication on the Disney Afternoon programming block, with an additional 13 episodes airing on Saturday mornings on ABC, for a total of 78 episodes. There was also a Christmas special, which aired in most syndication areas in late 1992, and following the conclusion of the cartoon series, 2 movies serving as epilogues to the TV series, which we will discuss a few minutes later in our review. With all that fun and joy, hard data said, let's go through the characters. We, of course, have Goofy, whose full name is Goofer G. Goof. As we said, he is a single father. There's really nothing ever said about the mother. She's simply not there. It's a classic Disney formula, often attributed to a tradition in Disney movies that the mother, if she is not present in the movie, like in Bambi, is rarely, if ever, mentioned due to Walt, during his lifetime, having some allegedly unresolved guilt issues over his mother's death. The story sent around is that he had bought his mother a new house after him and his brother Roy's company started striking big, being successful, and there was a radiator explosion in the house. Bad things happened. Mrs. Disney was no longer among the living. Again, these are all things I've heard about through popular culture. I am not saying any of this is 100% definite and a direct chain of thought events. Just throwing that out there. Hardcore Disney fanatics, please feel free to jump into the comments and correct me on any aspects of that story or any verifications of the story you would like to comment on. Still, it is generally a tradition in Disney that has been pushed away in more recent years, but for a long time you rarely saw both parents with main characters. Still, we're not going to dwell on that. We are here for the happiness. And that is that Goofy, despite being short attention span, scatterbrained, clumsy, and everything that could ever possibly involve the word goof, loves his son very much, and like any good father, strives to provide a good environment to raise his son in so his son will grow to be a good man. While Goofy does, in a good chunk of the episodes, tend to set off the events, in many of them it is caused by Max, and Goofy is there to help, although his help can often harm. His heart is in the right place, folks. And in that, we do salute Goofy for being an awesome father. We, of course, have Maximilian Max Goof, the son and only child of Goofy. He is 11 and a half years old at the start of the series and attends junior high school. He is active, alert, and generally friendly, always seeking to make new friends. He is also, like many children, mischievous and prone to plotting schemes to achieve his goals in a quicker and maybe not entirely 100% honest manner. And as I said earlier, that is what every good sitcom needs. That one character who's a good person, but gets so excited about the idea of, oh my god, I could get tickets to this concert, I could be the first person to ride this roller coaster, that they do shenanigans. And Max was a king of shenanigans. Still, like his father, he was extremely loyal to those he cared about, specifically his best friend and next door neighbor PJ. Max often pulling back on his shenanigans when they tended to cause PJ harm, or just plain adjusting his plans on the fly because he recognizes PJ's objections have a lot of validity and are being done for the sake of not wanting Max to go too far and potentially hurt himself. Max's interests include skateboarding, rock music, video games, and of course, especially in the later movies as he was a little bit older, girls. Their household is wound up with Waffles, Goof's male pet cat, who's often the victim of the various hijinks that go on between his owners and their neighbors, the Peets, as well as Goofy's clumsiness around the house. Many scenes involving Waffles tends to involve him getting nervous and, like any good cat, howling and racing off screen for his own safety. Waffles tends to have an antagonistic relationship with Pete's dog Chainsaw, although generally, like any good cat, he prefers to laze around minding his own business. Your main character cast is rounded out with Pete's family. We have Pete Sr., a used car salesman and the head of his household. The only source of income, he is greedy, scheming, self-centered, crude, but when push comes to shove, because it is Disney, folks, he does love his children and his wife, and recognizes as much as Goofy irritates the holy sin out of him, Goofy's also the only guy who swears Pete has a good side, and as such, his loyalty to Pete and their alleged friendship softens Pete's harsher edges. Still, when push comes to shove, many episodes revolve around Pete's get-rich-quick schemes, dragging his family and the Goofs into bad times until Pete pulls back, learning his lesson, or is just plain outwitted. Pete is often shown that despite being loudly boisterous about his maleness machismo and head of the household, as soon as his wife raises his voice, he shrinks down into a quiet yes ma'am. Because nobody could be married to somebody like Pete unless they were really the ones controlling the kingdom. His wife, of course, being Peg. Peg works as a real estate agent in Spoonerville and is in fact the one who sold the house next door to Goofy and Max in the opening episodes. She is a headstrong mother who's wise, quick-witted, sarcastic, and occasionally short-tempered and cantankerous, especially when Pete goes a little too far. Still, no matter how often they quarrel and yell at each other, their love is true, and they have been faithfully married for at least 20 years. She thinks Goofy is the bee's knees, though, and has a genuine friendship with him, which is part of Pete's irritation with Goofy, as Goofy's friendship with Peg means he has carte blanche to wander next door whenever he wishes, and Pete can't really send Goofy home too harshly without risking the wrath of the wife. Good times. Of course, we have the aforementioned female pet dog Chainsaw, who is generally a vicious, mean-spirited dog, often echoing Pete's "I'd rather be left alone" attitude, although with much less usefulness behind it. Chainsaw is generally prone to minding her own business, only getting wrathful when somebody interrupts her dogginess. The children are the aforementioned PJ, officially Pete Jr., the eldest child, and best friend of Max, having a strong friendship that is basically brothers. They always have each other's backs, although PJ, being the more nervous and a little bit heavier and unathletic of the two, means that he is the voice of reason and thus the straight man in the children's sitcom shenanigan hijinks, tending to play the role of accomplice and being the receiver of a lot of tough love from his father, who wants to raise PJ to be a good, strong, stalwart, confident man like himself. Pity that's not necessarily always a good thing. Like Max, PJ has intense loyalty to his friends, and no matter how much he may be nervous about doing something, will suck it up and get it done if it means making sure his friends and family come through unscathed. PJ does enjoy skateboarding and bike riding along with Max, but also tends to be a little less daredevil about those outdoor sports. Due to, as we said, he's a little more nervous and prone to worrying about getting hurt. But he always tries his best, and we give him great credit for that. We should all have a friend like PJ. PJ's younger sister is Pistol. Super hyperactive 5-year-old who is Daddy's little princess. Pete adores Pistol and gives her just about anything and everything she wants with little resistance. Pistol talks with a classic sitcom tiny little girl lisp and generally resembles a child version of her mother Peg. She is the classic American girly girl, being all about tea parties, cute animals, dolls. However, when push comes to shove, she has displayed an energetic tomboy streak due to her fascination with speed and flying and the occasional bit of professional wrestling, usually to the detriment of her older brother PJ. Pistol has been known to get herself into a bit of mischief on her own, leading to many people having to drag her away from situations in which she has gotten in over her head. Her hyperactiveness extends not just to physical activity, but verbal. Her poor voice actor, often having to speak at extremely rapid speed, imitating what we have all seen in those little children, the kinder, when they get really curious about something, and, they start asking, why is this, what if we did this, what if we did that? I can't even do it right. That's the point. I can't talk that fast anymore, because I'm not that young. But yes, she would go on streams of rapid, non-stop questions that would be halted only by the fact that every other older person around her gets exasperated and walks away, or they physically gag her so they can actually get an word in edgewise. Various other characters in the world include TV news reporter Danielle Rathmaker, local TV personality Biff Fuddled, Earl of Earl's Auto, Tan Roadster, Harold Hatchback, the Chief of Police, Mayor Baba, Giblet the Clown, and many others that make up the town. One of the other aspects about Goof Troop is that they would randomly throw out the standard formula to have Goofy try to educate Max on their long family history of goofs, leading to segments involving a time rewound version of Goofy as one of his ancestors, such as Sir Goofy of Knocknees, aka Goofin Hood, Elliot Goof, the FBI agent, Sherlock Goof, Mopalong Goof, a janitor turned sheriff, and Caveman Goof. Various versions of these would also include variants of Pete as the antagonist in these adventures. Most of these History Warp episodes are must-sees for any casual fan, as it does break slightly from the standard sitcom formula and allows the writers to have a little more fun with the base cast by doing ancestor versions of them. They can tweak personalities and really go crazy with some of the plots. This, of course, leads us up to the two films. First up, we had in 1995 a Goofy movie, which was released in theaters. and served as the first of the two epilogues. In this movie, Max has entered high school, seeks to win the affections of fellow student Roxanne just before summer break. However, summer break goes out of his plans when Goofy, due to a slightly miscommunicated, over-exaggerated in Max's shenanigans call from the principal, fears that not only has Max's growing up and reaching adulthood caused them to spend less time together, but that this itself is turning Max into a juvenile delinquent. Thus, over Max's protests and his preference to go to a rock concert on the other side of the country to see the pop singer Powerline, Goof takes Max on a road trip, specifically following the same meandering, wandering, taking your sweet time path that Goofy traveled with his father, leading up to a multi-generational favorite family fishing spot. This is where most of your conflict and fun and laughs come into the movie, as Goofy and Max not only find each other at odds, as Max, not having known about the conversation Goofy had with the principal, doesn't fully comprehend why Goofy is being so insistent they spend more time together and reassert their father-son bond, while also trying to figure out how to fulfill his really over-the-top, shouldn't have done it, promise to Roxanne that he would appear at the Powerline concert that the rest of the town will be watching on TV, due to him knowing Powerline. Yep, that old sitcom scheme. Oh, I totally know this famous celebrity that you're enamored with. I thought, trust me, I will, like, woo, we will meet and hang out and it'll be awesome. As well as Goofy's usual attempts to do anything right, going over the top. One of my favorite portions is when, while singing their alternate perspectives on the situation to each other, the two not only bounce around a canyon but end up in a river. Still, there are moments where the two get closer together, Max recognizing that when it's all said and done, Goofy loves him and will always be there for him. It is all clashing with his teenage scheming and need to indulge his hormonal desire to court Roxanne. And, not to give too many spoilers, but when it's all said and done, the two end up doing their best to fulfill Max's completely fictional, really was no reason to say it except you're desperate to impress a girl, promise to hang with Powerline, and ultimately win the girl of his dreams, while Goofy proves he is still best father ever. A few wonderful songs take place because it is classic Disney, and we get to see a variety of different locations, not just Spoonerville that we saw throughout the TV series. This was followed up 5 years later in 2000 with an extremely goofy movie. This one went direct to video and is considered the grand finale to Goof Troop. This time Max Goof is now graduating high school and going off to college, ready to no longer have to be around his father and truly become his own man. PJ and their buddy, blah, 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 where's my names here? Bobby, who was introduced in the first movie briefly and is voice acted by 90s icon Pauly Shore, end up clashing at college with the upper crust fraternity of elite rich people, while also making friends with female beatnik poet Beret Girl, voiced by the iconic Vicki Lewis, who has little use for the upper crusts herself. However, that all becomes secondary when Goofy, upon getting fired at the revelation that he has no higher education and thus doesn't really qualify for many jobs in this country anymore, not only decides to go back to school, but goes to enrolls at the same school that Max himself is in. Thus, Max's freedom to be his own man is upended and put on hold, as he now finds himself as just another goof on campus. But it's not all bad news, because Max realizes very quickly that Goofy enjoys the attentions of Sylvia, the college librarian. And Max schemes to encourage their romance so Goofy will have less time for Max. But it's not all simple, because, hey, when you're Goofy, courting a lady is never simple and straightforward. Not to mention that Max's attempts to impress the entire school by beating the rich elites at their own games, specifically a fictional college-only version of the real-world X Games. For those who don't know, the X Games is a celebration of extreme sports, skateboarding, bike riding, rollerblading, that kind of stuff. And as such is right up the alley, and a wonderful nod of continuity to Max's perpetual hobby of skateboarding, going back to the earliest episodes of the TV series. Goofy finds himself drawn into this conflict, and we get to a big finale where Goofy, Max, Sylvia, PJ, Bobby all have to figure out how to get along so they can give the elite upper crusts the comeuppance they have had coming for them since the opening moments of the movie. Again, no major spoilers about how successful the day is, but it is Disney, so trust that there is a happy ending. Besides all of this, though, it was also, when it comes to Goof Troop, 2 video games. The original for the Super Nintendo that came out in July 1993 and involved Max and Goofy having to deal with pirates and exploring an island they found themselves stuck on. We later had Disney's Extremely Goofy Skateboarding, released in September 2001 for PC, influenced by not just the TV series Goof Troop, but the more recent Extremely Goofy movie. Pretty much speaks for itself. It's a skateboarding game. Max has appeared occasionally in the House of Mouse series as a server working at the House of Mouse. But besides a few blink and you miss it cameos, the 2 movies generally have brought an end to the Goof Troop continuity. And with that, we bring an end to our video. It's like this. I highly recommend Goof Troop. As I said, when it comes to the various Disney afternoon programs, I would rank it in the top 3, definitely. And I do not fault people that would rank it as their number 1 choice. I personally lean more towards DuckTales as my number 1, but you know what? We will discuss DuckTales in a future ramblings. The movies are definite must-sees. You don't even really have to watch the TV show. All you have to understand about the movies is Goofy's got a teenage son and wants to be a good dad to his son. So, if you really don't want to invest in setting its time aside to binge a big old ton of episodes, even if they are only half hours, and include an incredibly awesome theme, report to the Goof Troop. Da, 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 da. Come on, it's the Goof Troop. Best of friends forever. Yeah, that song's awesome. Not gonna sing too much over though. Don't want to cause any copyright issues. I'm watching you, Disney, I know. At the very least, check out the two movies. It's all good. And when it's all said and done, Goofy will always be Goofy. So no matter what decade and variant of Goofy you're familiar with, Goof Troop Goofy will be an old friend, happy to see you again, and happy to make you laugh. Still, we're done for this round. I'm going to see you in 7. And remember, when it's all said and done, family's forever, so stay goofy. Because we all got an inner goof. A yuck.